At some point, centrist Democrats are going to have to stop using GOP talking points against the Democratic Party. Buttigieg did it again. Klobuchar has done it with the free stuff. Biden has done it as well. They have got to stop using GOP talking points.
In New Hampshire today, Pete Buttigieg said something very strange about Democrats and deficits.
My party's not known for worrying about deficits and the debt too much, but it's time for us to start getting into that business. Because what we've seen in Washington is that the party that talked a lot about the deficit when they were trying to kill off programs, when it came time for this corporate tax cut, turns out they don't care. There is $1 trillion deficit now, and created under a Republican administration. Which means if my party doesn't start getting interested in deficits and debt, nobody will.
In the middle of that, he attributed just the current $1 trillion deficit to the Republicans, but twice he criticized Democrats about the deficit, saying Democrats are, quote, not known for worrying about deficits. And he said, if my party doesn't start getting interested in deficits. Both of those lines are Republican lies. During Pete Buttigieg's entire lifetime, Republicans have increased the deficit and Democrats have worked hard to decrease the deficit and taken grave political risk in doing that. Pete Buttigieg was 11 years old when Bernie Sanders in the House of Representatives and Joe Biden in the United States Senate cast politically brave votes on a deficit reduction bill that no Republicans voted for because it included tax increases as well as spending cuts. And the Democrats lost the House of Representatives because of that vote for the first time in 40 years. The Democrats lost the United States Senate after that vote. Those were tough votes for Democrats that they cast out of their sense of responsibility about the deficit. When the Republicans got the White House back under President George W. Bush, the deficit and the debt skyrocketed again because Republicans in their reckless tax cuts. And then when President Obama took office, finally the president was worried about deficits again because the president was a Democrat. Two current presidential candidates voted for that deficit reduction. Bernie Sanders voted for it. Senator Amy Klobuchar voted for it. And she stands on that debate stage beside Pete Buttigieg, who has never done one thing in his life about the federal budget deficit or the national debt. 3 hours after what you just saw him say, reporters caught up with Pete Buttigieg again, and they asked him about his earlier statements about Democrats and deficits. And this time, surely after some consultation with his rapid response team, he put the Republicans first.
Yeah, so there are two things to think about. The first is Republican hypocrisy, because I believe every presidency of my lifetime has been an example of deficits growing under Republican government and shrinking under Democratic government. But the second is that my party's got to get more comfortable talking about this issue.
He couldn't stop at the part he got right. The Republican hypocrisy. He had to go on to criticize his party. Pete Buttigieg literally doesn't know what he's talking about when he talks about Democrats and the deficit, or he's deliberately lying, and I'm sorry, but those are the only choices. As someone who stood on the Senate floor in the middle of the night in 1993 as a Democratic Senate staffer and watched with pride as only Democratic senators cast that brave vote on a deficit reduction bill, which later cost some of them their re-elections, I will always fight the Republican lie about Democrats and deficits. There are plenty of things to criticize Democrats about. This isn't one of them, and every informed Democrat knows that.
One of the reasons we have a hard time passing progressive policies is because we have two battles that we're fighting. Many times we're fighting the Republican Party and we're fighting a particular sect within the Democratic Party. That must stop. We must all be on the same page.